Associate Director of Special Collections in the Beulah Davis Room right across the way in the Richardson Library. Our formal presider, Miss One, is experiencing some traffic issues and car trouble, so when she arrives, she will be tapped in. So I want to give you greetings on behalf of the Morgan State University current student population, as well as the African American Convocation series that we have here at Morgan State. In brief, I will have Ms. One give all the other kinds of accolades, but just briefly, I want to explain that we do have, since 1989, celebrated 9 convocations annually by President Richardson to amplify African American history and culture. As you all know, Morgan State is a historically and predominantly HBCU, historically Black university, but he wanted to really integrate on the granular level the importance of history, irrespective of one's major here at Morgan. So we want to thank President Richardson for that. And it's since that time we now do the 9 celebrations a month. What I'm going to have us do is have us silence our phones, and I'm going to play for you on video the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Once I start that, I would like everyone to stand, and then I'll be followed by professorship giving an occasion, and followed by another video presentation by Mr. Jason Sanford on Benjamin-Quarles and Perrin Mitchell, the Negro National Anthem. If everyone can please stand for the singing of the Negro National Anthem, thank you.
Bless our feet, straight from the places of God where we met thee. Bless our hearts, trumpet the line of the world before everything. Shouting in thy hand, will we forever stand. True to our God, true to our name.
Thank you. You may be seated. I would now like Professor Ship to bring to us the occasion on today. Do you want to use them?
Good morning, everybody. We're here today. Well, some of us are here today because we had to be, but we're here today because this is Black History Month. While we at Morgan take very seriously our history 24/7, 365, we elevate that practice in February with multiple convocations designed to honor the legacy of our ancestors while conveying to you, the current students of Morgan, the inspirational messages that we hope you will receive today. When a rumor began to circulate that among a barrage of executive actions taken by the 47th President of the United States was one canceling Black History Month, many people who were otherwise indifferent to this annual time of reflection, renewal, celebrations, and demonstrations became defenders. At Morgan, we know that the 47th president does not have the authority to cancel Black History Month. It dates back to 1926, when Dr. Carter G. Woodson and the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History promoted Negro History Week to highlight contributions of Black Americans. We were called Negroes then. They chose the second week of February to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. In the 1960s, amid all the activism going on in the country, HBCUs and Black cultural centers began observing a month of Black history. So in 1976, during the nation's bicentennial, President Gerald Ford encouraged everyone to do the same, to, quote, seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history, end of quote. So if the day comes when hell freezes over and when pigs start flying, if in those days even ASALH, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, decides to cancel Black History Month, we know what the Morgan response will be. Well, first we try to figure out why or what happened to all of the ASALH officers who are Morgan faculty and staff. Dr. Jones, Dr. K. Wise Whitehead among them. But we would continue to prioritize our history 24/7, 365, and continue to recall to new generations the accomplishments of our ancestors. Today's convocation is held in memory of Dr. Benjamin Quarles, a renowned scholar who helped create the field of African American studies through his work in history, and Representative Perrin J. Mitchell, a Morgan alum and faculty member who became the first Black person elected to Congress from the state of Maryland. The footprints of each of these men can still be seen in academia and in public policy. We will now watch a video created by Jason Sanford, a graduate student in the School of Global Journalism and Communication. It introduces these esteemed men to some of you and brings back memories to others of you, especially those among our alum who will probably be watching this over the live stream.
Benjamin A. Quarles was a prolific writer, a great wordsmith, the historian David Levering Lewis has said. His essays in the Mississippi Valley Historical Review in 1945 and 1959 were the first from a Black historian to appear in a major historical journal. This was at a time when the academic world considered Black or Negro history to be either non-existent or too limited in scope to be worthy of the term scholarship. The gatekeepers were dismissive of the subject and anyone who pursued it. Dr. Quarles made it his mission to prove them wrong.
Morgan teachers are research scientists, artists, writers, professional and educational leaders, consultants to private industry and government, and civic workers. Here you meet teachers like Dr. Benjamin A. Quarles, who is the foremost scholar of today on Negro history. He has done research at the invitation of the John Harvard Library and Oxford University. Dr. Quarles believes research interest in the Negro is growing.
I believe that in the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a marked increase in the interest in the historic role of the Negro in this country. I think this increase stems in part because of the United States leadership in the free world and our commitment to the principles of freedom. I think also the interest in America in non-Western cultures, Asian and African cultures, has had its role. And then I think, too, that the unfinished business of democracy at home, this has created an interest in depth in the historic role of America's greatest minority.
By 1952, he had published 2 major books, including the first scholarly biography of Frederick Douglass, and answered the call to another HBCU, Morgan State College of Baltimore. At Morgan, Quarles became chair of the history department and remained so until the mid-1960s. While at Morgan, he published 4 of his 10 books. In his professional prime as a renowned historian, Quarles thrived in work, where he became known as an outstanding mentor and popular professor, the college's first teacher of the year. Although wooed by other universities, Quarles remained at Morgan even after the age of racial segregation had ended.
I interviewed Roland McConnell, and I asked him about Benjamin Quarles. I also interviewed Benjamin Quarles' wife.
Oh, yes, Brett. Mm-hmm.
And they were what they described when they described Benjamin Quarles was a man who, he did all of his research, all of his books. He did all of his research himself.
Yes.
He didn't have any graduate assistants. I mean, Dr. Thompson used to say the difference between Negro scholarship and white scholarship is that when you go to Harvard, you got like you have a chauffeur limousine that takes you to the library, they meet you, they give you tea, they offer you tea, you got grad assistants, that you are supervising. He said the Negro's got to do it all himself.
Literally.
And a man like, of course, Carter G. Woodson, Benjamin Quarles, John Henry Clark. I mean, these people, are just so amazing. They did all this work themselves.
And taught a full load.
Quarles' wife, you could see the pain in her eyes talking about it. She said she couldn't get him to do anything but work. He was up all night, many nights writing, and she said at the library or something, and you can see the production.
He always made himself available to younger scholars like Paula Giddings, who wrote him in 1981 when she was searching for material for what would ultimately become the groundbreaking 1984 book, When and Where I Enter, The Impact of Black Women on Race and Sex in America. David Blight also wrote to him in 1981 when he was early into his work for a PhD, which he earned in 1985. Another of Dr. Quarles' mentees became a colleague on the faculty, Dr. Rosalind Terborg Penn, who was a pioneer in Black women's history. Dr. Quarles continues to inspire scholars such as those who participate in Morgan's Benjamin Quarles Humanities and Social Science Institute. It sponsors the Quarles Faculty Fellows in Research and Professional Enrichment, Quarles Graduate Student Scholars in African American and African Diaspora Studies, Quarles Undergraduate Scholars in Interdisciplinary Perspectives on the African American Legacy, and Quarles Summer Outreach Partnership with Baltimore City Public High Schools.
Quarles was not an egocentric man. He was very easy in his skin. He knew who he was. He delighted in being a good teacher and a better scholar.
You've obviously proven there's life after Congress.
I left the Congress because I felt that we needed an entity outside of the Congress. We've got laws on the books for minority businesses, and obviously the Reagan administration chose not to enforce them. And I thought we needed that other thing on the outside, so I planned this. As Congressman Fauntleroy knows, I planned for this in 1980 when the administration came in, and the fund became operative in 1984. This nation made a great promise to minorities. It promised that the federal government was going to be committed to the development and enhancement of a strong, viable minority entrepreneurial class. In its promise, the federal government said that it would set an example, that by precept and conduct, it would set an example for the private sector to follow. In effect, our government at that point committed itself to the second phase of the civil rights struggle.
He was often referred to in mainstream media as an angry Black man. Others called it righteous indignation, shaped by his experiences growing up in Baltimore. One seminal moment took place in 1933 when his older brother Clarence Mitchell Jr., a reporter for the Afro newspaper, returned home from covering the lynching of a young Black man, George Arnold, on the Eastern Shore. Clarence was so disturbed by what he had seen that he vomited at his family dinner table. In that moment, life changed for Perrin, who was 15 years younger than Clarence.
I love my brother very much, as most people know. And to see him that evening at supper, that my family ate all together, and to see him not be able to eat because of that. And the thing, I guess, that upset me most was, I didn't know what a lynching was. I was a little child. But whatever the thing was that had hurt him so badly, the fact that he was hurt, I guess, really started sparking my interest in this. Then years ago, it must have been in the late 30s, early 40s, there was something in Baltimore known as the Citywide Young People's Forum.
Right.
And I remember my brother Clarence taking me there, and I was young. But it was a fascinating experience to see Black artists, Black educators come and lecture, sing. Out of that Citywide Young People's Forum, as you know, came the first challenge to the segregation at the University of Maryland Law School, the Donald Murray case. One of the participants in that forum was Thurgood Marshall. A whole host of a new level of leadership came into the city as a result of that Citywide Young People's Forum. Although I was very young at that time, I was old enough to understand exactly what was being said in terms of the discrimination, the racism. As a result of that, I remember one of my first picketing ventures was at Ford's Theater, when at that time Black people could only sit in that third balcony. And I remember night after night being there on that picket line, and the actual ugliness, the hostility on the part of some of the whites across the picket line, or who just annoyed us because we were there. And then the encouragement that came from some of the others. From that point on, it was just one thing after another. Once you got into it, events were breaking pretty fast, and that's the way it happened. I'm a firm believer in accepting the Constitution as it's written. And it says promote the general welfare. And for me, that means when everything else fails, when there are no jobs in the private sector, when the private sector is unable to provide low-income housing, when because of one circumstance or another, people can't get the money to send their children to college, then that's the constitutional mandate to promote the general welfare when everything else fails. And that's where I come from. If my earlier statement is correct, that there's a new mood out there in the country, and as a part of that new mood, I think it's anti-civil rights. I really do. Then we're going to have a tough time for a while in civil rights. The court challenges, the charges of reverse discrimination and all of that kind of thing. But eventually, I think this nation will get back to the full understanding that it will never, ever be the power that it can be in the world until we have actually solved the problem of racism in America or reduced it to its irreducible lowest level. And I think decent people are going to understand that they're going to swing away from this anti-affirmative action, anti-civil rights posture at some time in the future. But I think we're going to have a difficult time for the next 5-6 years in that arena.
Can we get one more round of applause for the video? Good morning, everybody. My name is Olajumoke Oni. I am a graduating senior, multi-platform production major, housed in the School of Global Journalism and Communication. Any communication people in the building? Okay, I see you. And I come from the gorgeous Prince George's County, Maryland, and I humbly serve as Miss Senior for the 2024-2025 academic school year. So there's a little bit about me, but we are here for our guest speaker. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him, who is also, a Morganite just like we are. So shortly after completing the U.S. Army Rotary Wing Aviators course, author Arnold Sampson was assigned to the 68th Medical Detachment Helicopter Ambulance in the Republic of Vietnam, where he spent much of his tour in Chu Lai. During that tour, he spent time in the unit's 2 field standby sites located at Ben Man Thao and Duc Pon, and he also had a short temporary duty stint with the 254th Medical Detachment in Nha Than, with assignments as the unit's supply officer, acting detachment commander, executive officer, and operations officer. He became intimately involved in the day-to-day operations of medic unit. 7 months into his tour, he began an aircraft commander with the call sign Dustoff 85. To him, that felt like a 7-year sojourn. He was awarded several commendations that were part of the team/crew effort. However, his 2 Purple Awards, awarded after separate injuries from Chopin and his Broken Wing Award, were more singular and very personal. During his short year of service, he was also awarded the Bronze Star, at least 5 awards of the Air Medal with V device for heroism, and Distinguished Flying Cross and a Vietnamese Cross of Terry with Silver Star device for heroism. After returning to the States, he earned the FAA commercial helicopter license, pilot's license, while stationed at Fort Arm, California. He is writing this book to recount the most vivid memories of his varied experiences in the unit in hopes that telling his story might enable him to sleep better at night. He has post-Vietnam insomnia and tranquil sleep in country or who scummed in the long tendrils of the war once they got home. He values them, misses them, and dedicates this book to the memoirs and their families. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome author Arnold, who will be interviewed by my fellow classmate, Lillian Stevens. Please come to the stage at this time, Lillian. Okay. One more round of applause for him.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I want to thank Dr. Jones for inviting me. She and I met in the context of me mentioning the book that I'd written to her, and she said, "Well, he kind of seems a little goofy, and I think he dresses a little funny, but he does seem to make a little sense. So maybe, just maybe, he'd be a decent speaker for the students on for the Mitchell-Quarles Convocation, African American Convocation." And I'm grateful. I'm good. It's good to see you all here. I was thinking to myself that your motivation for listening to me, I would think, if I was sitting out there, I would thinking, well, what's this old guy going to tell me that I really need to hear? And I'll say this, that I'll say three terms that come to mind. I was sitting here thinking about them. One of them is paradigm shift. Anybody know what that means? If so, raise your hand. I'd like to just, yes, ma'am. What does it mean? Would you tell me?
Paradigm shift is like a substantial shift in your perspective or the circumstances of your life.
Okay, wonderful. That is wonderful. By the way, if I ask a question like that, there are no wrong answers. If she said something I didn't want her to say, I would treat that as the right answer to a different question and keep and keep on talking. The fact is, a paradigm shift is exactly what she said. It means a change in the parameters that we're used to seeing, and we're used to seeing presidents be respectful to the person that they have succeeded. That has not been happening. We're used to seeing the U.S. not engage in colonialism, like talking about taking Canada and Greenland and other places, the Panama Canal, just the things that are amazing to me. So this is a change. So what we have in common is that years ago, I sat in an auditorium, not in this building because it didn't exist, but in another building, and listened to speakers or engaged in activities with the college without any thought that one day I'd be going to war. Frankly, you all, I don't know what's going to happen to you. Things are changing. The day is 1 month after our president took oath of office, and the things we've done in that month have just been mind-boggling to me. And so I'm hoping that you will have a pleasant, easy, predictable future ahead. But I got a feeling that there's some things coming, and that you may, like myself, find yourself in a combat situation that you may not be as anxious to engage in. I thought about it and decided, because I know you all so well, that I would confess something to you that I've never confessed to anybody, and that was when I finished Morgan. I graduated. I was a psychology major. I got commissioned the same day that I graduated as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army's Medical Service Corps, and I had applied to and was accepted by Howard University grad school. I had money because my father had died suddenly in my junior year, and his employer gave me money to go to grad school with. So I went to grad school at Howard, grieving heavily without knowing it, and took a full load, a heavy load at Howard. But I really thought that, well, by the time I finished grad school, the war will be over in Vietnam. There'll be no more war. Wrong, 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 wrong. Not too long afterwards, I ended up reporting for active duty with the U.S. Army. I mentioned Medical Service Corps, which was located in San Antonio. The headquarters was in San Antonio, Texas, at Fort Sam Houston. And the protocol of the Army at the time was to expose its new officers to 2 months of orientation about their branch, so that you'd know what the branch did as an officer, you'd know what what was expected of you, and you'd get your first assignment. I had every expectation, they had every expectation, I should say, really, of sending me to Fort Riley, to Kansas, to be like a hospital administrator at a hospital at Fort Riley, Kansas. I had another plan, and that plan was, frankly, to join the Army's marksmanship team and compete with the marksmanship team. That was going to be my fate. They didn't know how good I shot. I was, I could shoot a rifle, and I mean, really good, I thought. And that was my plan. That was my secret plan. Didn't work out that way. Instead, as part of the activities for this new group of officers, they exposed us to various things. And one of the things they exposed us to was a film about the medical evacuation helicopter mission going on in Vietnam my branch was responsible for. And when I saw that film, I think I lost my mind. They said, after the film, they said, does anyone want to volunteer for flight school? And my little hand went right up. I got a feeling that out of the 23 officers in the class, probably there were 12, 13 officers who raised their hand. In the end, only 6 of us went to flight school. 8 months of training, 4 in Texas and 4 in Georgia, and I was a pilot. I wrote a book about that, my experience as a pilot. It's called Dustoff, More Than Met the Eye. Dustoff was the name of the mission of the aircraft that had a red cross on the nose. Those aircraft went out and picked up wounded from the battlefield, and that's what I flew. That was a mission that I flew. You couldn't have told me that's where I would have been a year earlier. I would never have told you that. I would not have guessed that I'd be flying medical evacuation helicopters. I would never have guessed that. I did it. It was exhilarating. It was gratifying, and it was terrifying. We never knew what was going to happen. All we knew was we had a wounded, sick, injured person who needed and deserved to get to a medical facility, and we were the ones who had the responsibility for going out to get them. I hadn't really intended to go down this path, but I'm going to, instead of talking about the book, which I'm hoping one day you'll read. If you have to get it from the library, fine. I bought a few copies in case you want to obtain a copy, buy a copy. I know students don't buy books for the most part. They don't have to buy. I didn't. So I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I didn't buy books that I didn't have to buy. But here, let me give you. I want to draw on your imagination, if I may, for a few minutes. There's an imaginary guy. This is not a real thing, but I want you to feel something, if you will. I don't know how well I'll be able to do this, but imagine a guy from a little town called Templeton, Alabama. Caucasian fella, nice guy, about 18 years old, got drafted, reported for duty, infantry branch, went through basic training, went through advanced training. He finds himself in Vietnam. He's thinking, this is the hottest, dirtiest place I've ever been. What am I doing here? Because none of us knew for sure why we were in that country. We weren't sure. We thought, this is crazy. Now I have a perspective that I didn't have then, but most of us were scratching our heads about why we were, what were we doing there as a country? Anyway, this guy, I'm going to give him a name. I'm going to call him Hayes Blanchard. And I'm going to pretend that he got his first name because his mom liked an actor whose name was Gabby Hayes. He was a kind of a comedic actor in Western movies back in the day. So she named her son Hayes. So Hayes Blanchard is walking with his unit. He's got two buddies, Gomez and Jonesy. Let's call him Jonesy. And he's thinking, I wonder if I can get away with dropping a couple of these magazines. Magazines meaning the containers for bullets that go into what he was carrying. He was carrying an M16. They were heavy, and he was thinking, I know you drop a couple of these things in, because this is just wearing me down. But no, I might need them. I don't know. I might need them. And daggone it, I can't believe I'm still carrying these C rations. And just as he's thinking about the C rations, what happens? He feels something hit him, and it knocks him down. And he says, ouch, and he gets hit again. And suddenly, he can't feel his legs. And he starts to say, medic, help me, I've been hit. And the medic comes over. The medic, when the guy gets there, the medics typically were called doc because they carried medical supplies and they were expert emergency treatment specialists. And he says, "Doc, am I okay?" And the expression on the medic's face is, "I'm scared to death. This is over my head." But he didn't say anything. He says, "You'll be okay. You'll be okay, Hayes. Hang on, Havesy. You'll be okay." He said, "No, don't play with me, man. Don't play with me. Will I be okay? Because all day I'm just worried. I'm just worried. I can't feel my legs. I'm trying to sound like Hayes a little bit. I'm not doing a good job. Don't hate me. Anyway, he's thinking, we're in trouble. We've been walking for 4 hours. We're in the middle of nowhere. Here I can't feel my legs. What's going to happen next? And I don't think it's going to be something good. And he's thinking, I think I'm going to die. Because there's no way, there's no trucks in this jungle. There's no roads in this jungle. We've been walking. No one's going to come for us. And suddenly he hears, and he's thinking to himself, we don't need any more ammunition or food, because the only helicopter he'd heard was one that came out to resupply that unit with ammo and food occasionally, where they would fly over near the ground, drop it out, and keep on going. And he's thinking, what in the world? At that point, he kind of blacks out. But when he kind of comes to again, he sees through all the debris that's flying at him, an aircraft sitting on the ground with a red cross on its nose and on its doors. And he sees Jonesy and Gomez, his two buddies, wrap him up in a part of a tent called a shelter half, and take him, standing up, take him to the chopper. He can't believe it, because he knows they would rather be flat to the ground, safe, but they're risking their lives to get him in this aircraft. He can't believe it, and he blacks out again. Next time he comes to, he looks up and he sees a woman. He thinks for sure this is an angel, because I gotta be dead. There's no angel. There are no women in Vietnam. So I'm dead. I'm gone. Then he realizes, no, it's a nurse, and she's saying, "Mr. Specialist Hayes, you'll be okay. Just hang on. We'll be okay. You're in the hospital here at the 91st Surgical Hospital." So he blacks out again. The next time he comes to, because they put him in an induced coma, when he comes to, he's back in the States at Walter Reed. And he's thinking, I can't believe it. The only problem is he only has one leg, because one of the bullets that hit him destroyed his leg, and they couldn't save it. They wanted to save it, but they couldn't save it. And he's thinking, my God, but I'm lucky to be alive. The other bullet hit him in the back, so some of the pain he could have been feeling, it was spared because his back was damaged. At that point, he meets his future wife. He meets a woman who's the sister of his roommate, the guy sharing the room with him, and gets to talking to her. They start to chatting. I would tell you that she tells her brother a joke, and he hears it and laughs. I would tell you the joke, but I don't think I have time. It's an appropriate joke, but I don't think you want to hear it unless you raise your hand and say you want to hear it. No one raised their hand, so I'm spared to tell them this joke. Anyway, he marries her. They have children, and their children are alive today. And so what Dustoff did was save people who would have died in the middle of nowhere. That's what we did. I never would have thought I would have experienced that. When I was sitting in the classes in the kind of the setting that you're in now, Morgan had lost one person. Lieutenant Anthony Watkins had died in Vietnam. He was an advisor. It was relatively safe in that part of the war. As time went on, though, it went from being an advisory situation to being a combat situation. I'm hoping that your future does not have that, you're not in store for that. But there's talk about something going on in the Ukraine. The Ukraine is currently in peace talks to resolve the war, only they're not present for those peace talks. Something about that doesn't feel right to me. So it could be that U.S. troops will be there in Ukraine, solving the war problem by siding with Russia. Kind of a shock, as I said, paradigm shift. The other word I was going to tell you about was zeitgeist. Zeitgeist means spirit of the times. We are in a time that Black History Month has been a traditional, honored, revered time to celebrate people who came to this country in an oppressed state, but suddenly now it's in jeopardy, as it formerly has been celebrated. And so the spirit of the times are changing, and we don't know as people where that's going. This has nothing to do with which party you're in. If you work for the federal government, by the way, your party affiliation made no difference at all, because the fact is what's being imposed by the government impacts us all. I'm going to stop talking now because Dr. Jones just signaled a death threat to me. Understandably, and say that it's an honor to be standing before you. I hope that your time at Morgan is as fruitful as my time proved to be, and I'm going to sit down and be interviewed like I'm supposed to be. Again, I hope you will consider taking a look at my book. It talks about my experiences in Vietnam. It's not about heroics. It's about some of the things that I saw that were mind-bending. With that said, thank you for allowing me to speak with you, and I'll be joining the interviewer now.
I'm going to allow you to use this microphone.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ma'am.
Just to introduce myself a little bit, my name is Lillian Stevens. I am a graduating senior at Morgan State University. And what's my major again? Oh, strategic communication from the School of Global Journalism and Communication. It is a pleasure to speak with you today. I also served in the military. I was in the Marine Corps for 10 years.
Well, thank you for your service.
And my favorite time was when I was attached to an air station. So I understand a little bit of what you're talking about. One thing I would like to cover, because we talk exhaustively about your military service, but what are some of the things you did after you got back from military service?
When I got back from the military service, one of the things I did was work for Morgan briefly, and it was very interesting. I worked in the counseling center, and I worked in the institutional research, I think it's called, center. And then I decided I'd apply for a job with the federal government because good employer, good salary. And I took an exam called the Federal Service Entrance Exam and scored well. I got 95.3 on the exam. And I took it again, feeling I could do better, and I got a 95.8. However, because I had a Purple Heart, actually I have two, they gave me an additional 10 points. So my official score on the was 105.3, and I had a 105.8 score. I competed for and set for the management intern option, and was hired and was qualified to get on that roster, and went to work for the federal government as a management intern for the Health, Education, and Welfare Department. So I did that. I've worked for, so I stayed with that department for a number of years. I also have worked for Johns Hopkins School of Medicine as a standardized patient and as a physical exam teaching associate. I currently work as a mediator for the Circuit Court of Maryland for Baltimore City and Anne Arundel County. I'm going to shut up and let you ask your next question. Sorry.
One of the quotes I saw you'd say was something like, "I want to justify the life that God gave me." What do you mean when you say that?
One of the things that I didn't, it's on the podium, I was fearful of Dr. Jones, but I wrote an article, a magazine article, that talked about survivor's guilt, meaning when I served, I thought I was a decent guy. I think I'm a decent guy, but 58,000 people died in that war. More than that, actually, because a lot of people came home and died shortly thereafter. Death by police, death by alcohol, or something. And I'm thinking to myself, it's caused me to think, well, why did I survive? What was I left? Was I allowed to live? And I finally concluded that, well, if God spared me, given how many times I was exposed to hostile fire, then maybe my job is to try to do some good on this earth for the time that I have remaining. And I've been trying to do that in a variety of ways.
What are some of the things you've done to live the very best life that you could?
Well, back in school, back at Morgan, I joined a fraternity. I'm a Kappa. I'll just say that. I'm a Kappa Alpha Psi brother. And I pledged in my freshman year and went over. I started pledging in the freshman year and went over in my sophomore year. But I also have created a men's group. Currently, during the pandemic, I realized how many really cool men I had met, and who I thought were good examples from good role models or had done something cool in my presence. And so I invited a number of them to join me on a Zoom because we were all sheltering in place because of COVID. And a number of them did, and we have formed a group that has met. On this past Tuesday, we met for the 118th time to compare notes, to think about what's going on in the political landscape that we're currently living in, to talk about things that happen in our bodies as we age. So that's one of the things that I've done.
Why did you choose to do that thing specifically?
Because there are interesting milestones in our lives based on gender. There's a milestone that women encounter at around age 50. There's a milestone that humans encounter around 40. The muscles in our eyes change, and we go from not needing glasses to needing glasses. Around 70 in a man's life, there are things that happen in his body, and I decided, well, if we talk to one another about those things, it might make some of these changes more palatable, so to speak. For example, we have issues with our prostate gland, and I am a prostate cancer survivor. Thank you, Vietnam. Sorry, Agent Orange. But the point is that most men at age 70 experience something. And so I thought by comparing notes that we would, in fact, could exchange some wisdom about how to cope with things that go along with that. We have issues with our weight, or we have issues with our knee joints or our hip joints. Those things happen. So that's why.
Okay. In what ways would you say that your education and experiences at Morgan influenced your life?
Morgan was a delight for me. I went to Pimlico Junior High School right out of elementary school. It was predominantly a Jewish school on Northern Parkway right at Park Heights. I was supposed to skip, but the culture shock caused me just to be an average student, not an excelling student. So I didn't skip like I was supposed to, jump ahead a grade. But I was successful. I didn't fail. I just wasn't feeling great about it. And at some point I decided I wasn't feeling good about my self-esteem was not where I wanted it to be, and I started hooking school. I only succeeded in doing it 2 days, and on day three, my mother caught me on day four. I was in school 181 in heaven. I loved 181, Charles Houston Junior High School. I couldn't believe we had a track team. I loved it. Couldn't believe it. And at the end of 181, because I'd had a really solid foundation at Pimlico, my grades there were great. And the counselor had met with me in the end of the ninth grade and said, "Mr. Sampson, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to City or do you want to go to Poly?" And I said, "Let me think about that. Oh, I know, Douglas." And I went to Douglas and loved it. I was on the rifle team there. I was on the track team there. Did fairly well. And from Douglas, I fooled them. I took another test and apparently scored well enough to have two scholarships offered to me, which enabled me to move. I had two scholarships that enabled me to move on to the dorm here at Morgan, as opposed to commuting back and forth from my house on Moreland Avenue off of North Avenue. So so bottom line is Morgan was a rich experience for me. I was a psych major. If I had to define what Morgan didn't have a minor. I don't know if it has a minor now, but if I had a minor declared, it would have been military science because I was in the advanced corps. And once I finished the first 2 years of required military science experience, and also was on the rifle team, and I was, in fact, the captain. In fact, I'm not showing off, but this is the first time I've worn it in public. I'm wearing a ring from the Hall of Fame. I've been inducted into the Morgan Hall of Fame for my rifle marksmanship. Well, thank you for saying it. Checks will be in the mail. Sorry. Um, uh, I was the CIAA rifle champion in 1965. The team won the CIAA rifle championship against Howard, Hampton, A&T, Virginia State, Petersburg, Virginia State, Norfolk, maybe Delaware State, but they all competed and we were the top team and we won the championship.
Well done. Today, we live through unprecedented times when you consider our political, judicial, and even our American business leaders. What advice would you offer to today's students and graduates as they face today's societal challenges?
My advice would be treat everything like it counts. When I pledged, I was sometimes really tired and I would sleep in class. I had to. I didn't do it on purpose. I just couldn't stay awake. I don't know what I missed, but whatever I missed, I'm sorry, because everything that I learned, I've had a chance to use. I've taught for the University of Phoenix as a classroom instructor. I've been an instructor for Morgan. I taught the real estate licensing course for Morgan. I taught for CCB licensing course. I'm a real estate broker of a lot of years in Maryland and Pennsylvania. All that stuff that I learned counted. I didn't pay as much attention as I should have, and now I say to you, pay attention. Believe me, it'll come in handy. What you have in your head will guide you. It won't necessarily make you completely immune to the negative feelings of others, but frankly, it'll help you navigate your life. I'll say something else, if I may, and that is spend your money on appreciating assets. That means on things that grow in value. Don't spend your money on things that will just lose value as soon as you buy them. And real estate has been good to me. I probably have owned 25 houses 25 pieces of property. They weren't all houses along the way. I regret having sold the one that I sold. I still own about five. But I'm not boasting, I assure you. It's just that it does grow in value and it does yield financial security over time. So I'd encourage you to look at things that will grow in value as you go forth.
Last question. What's the best life advice that you got during your life that you feel like you should have used sooner?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you. Question.
What is the best life advice you ever got that you feel you should have used sooner?
That's an excellent question. I think the best advice was be the best person you can be. Don't be kind be kind as often as you can. Be thoughtful to other people, and I think that was good advice. I mean, I did take that advice, but it took me a while to appreciate how rich that advice was. That in the end, we're all doing the exact same thing. It's omega. It's alpha to omega. It is cradle to grave. We're all going to be all going to age. We're all going to the things we have, the material trappings we have. We can't take them to the grave with us, but the relationships we have will blossom and benefit the world. So the more thoughtfully, the kinder we treat other people, the more we connect with other people, the better off we are. And thank you for your questions.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank
I'll
you.
turn everything back over to our lovely MC, Olajumoke.
Thank you. At this time, if we have any questions from the audience, feel free to step up at this time right here to this microphone.
While we're waiting, I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
A true journalist professorship.
People, don't be shy.
This is terrifying. I'm scared to death.
Nah. No, if you were, if your guidance were sought by a young person today about whether they should become involved in ROTC and plan a future that includes the military, what guidance would you give them?
The Army, the military experience for me started out as a 2-year obligation because of ROTC. But when I went to flight school, they said they invested $250,000 in my training, that 8 months of flight training. And the Army extended my obligation to 4 years. So I did 4 years of active duty. I think I gained a lot from my military experience, and I think it bore a lot of fruit. And I would say that it was provided a very strong foundation. It certainly helped me develop self-confidence. It helped me realize that there's some very highly technical things like learning how to fly a machine that doesn't really want to fly. Helicopters don't really want to fly. Really, unlike fixed wings, which can glide, helicopters are more like a rock that wants to fall out of the sky, crash, roll up in a ball, catch fire, and kill everybody on board. That's what it wants to do. And my job as a pilot was to not have it do that. But I learned how to do that, and learned how the tactics in Vietnam and how to avoid being shot. I pretty much succeeded with that. But I would say, yes, the military was great. The last 30 days have been conflicting to me because now I don't know where our country's going in terms of using the might we have. And so I'm not going to pretend that the advice I would have given you 34 days ago is the same advice I'd give you now. The military can give you quite a bit of discipline and maturity. It'll help mature you. It's just, it depends on who the commander-in-chief, what the commander-in-chief's outlook is and what their veracity is. And you know what the word veracity means.
Yes.
Hi, yes, my name is Jasmine Wyndham. I am also a psychology student. I'm a junior currently,
Yes.
and I minor in biology and chemistry. I have a lot of career interests, and I just wanted to ask you how your psychology background affected your career journey.
Thank you for asking that question. That's a great question. Frankly, my theory now, as a guy who's about 135 years old, and that wasn't funny, is that people who for me, I majored in psychology because a young guy, on the first day of school, who went to City, I went to Douglas, Wayne Anderson was his name, and he decided he was going to try psychology, and I had the same interest. I think we wanted to major in psychology to figure ourselves out and to figure out what made people tick. And I think that might apply to people who major in psychology, sociology, and maybe social work, maybe. Bottom line is, it has helped me my interest in human behavior, it has been a major guiding force in my life. I do work as a mediator for the court, and I try to help parents figure out how to deal with child access issues. Um, I have worked purely in the psychology area as a counselor, but the truth is, the real strength in psychology begins when you get your PhD. And so I went into a doctoral course at Howard, but I didn't do the dissertation, so I didn't get the PhD. But I frankly think that it's a fascinating field. The human mind is a fascinating place to delve into. And so we need more people to help us think about why we do what we do, and to help us get clear on why, what we're thinking and why we're doing what we're doing. So you're in a good spot. Good on you. And thank you for the question.
I have one more question.
Oh, sure.
Actually, I forgot. One second. Hi, my name is Leslie Johnson. I'm a sophomore. Hi, my name is Leslie Johnson. I'm a sophomore mechatronics engineering major. My question is similar to this lady's question. You were a psychology major and you have a military background. How does the application of a psychology degree versus an engineering degree kind of affect your role in the military?
I think that my background that I studied psychology at Morgan and at Howard University probably made me do a couple things, but some of this may not be. I can't necessarily credit psychology, but let me say I'm proud of the fact that I went to Vietnam. Was fairly well decorated, frankly. Distinguished Flying Cross, couple of Purple Hearts, a Broken Wing Award, on and on and on. And in fact, I'm part of the large population of Dustoff personnel who have been awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. But I think that I'm proud of the fact that I didn't hurt anybody in that year and I didn't kill anybody. That feels good. That feels good to me. And psychology might have given me the empathy to value that. I've not killed anybody in my life. I think that my interest in human beings is that psychology helped foster, probably has caused me to have the outlook I have, but also part of it. So that is intellectual. There's also a spiritual component as well. I think as a human, spiritually, I'm not a person who likes to hurt people, so psychology was very much connected to that sentiment that was put into me, probably by my mother, probably. So I hope I answered your question. I didn't do a great job, but hope you won't do the karate on me and kill me. So thank you for the question, though.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so actually two things. First, I went to Baltimore Polytechnic Institute. Choosing Douglas is a choice. Two, I wanted to ask you about your planning and your ability to handle all the different things and juggle, because you seem very multifaceted and well-rounded. And I wanted to ask you how you had the mental strength more so to could do as much as you do and still stay relatively calm and level.
I would say for all of us that there are several demands, but demands not the right word, but I'll say what they are and then I'll figure out the right label for them. It's intellectual, emotional, physical, financial, social. We have to thrive in all those areas to be well-rounded as a person. All those areas require attention from us. I think, frankly, I didn't plan on saying this, but I've already made one confession to you all about thinking that grad school might spare me Vietnam. I'll make another confession, and that confession is that I think I was a thrill seeker. And so I am currently a private investigator. I'm currently a handgun instructor and have been for a number of years. I have done a lot of things. I used to be a court commissioner. That's the first person an arrested person saw when they were once they were arrested on the street. They would see a court commissioner decide whether they would be what conditions they would terms of their release, if any. Certain offenses you could not be released on. But I've done a lot of things in my life because I was interested in them and found them fascinating. I wanted to be responsible financially. I think I've finally, you never know, but I finally think I've achieved that. But you never know what's in the mailbox. I mean, and the president has just decided no more pennies. And I'm going to be honest with you all. If I see a penny on the ground, I'll stop and pick it up, and I call it a penny from heaven. That's how. But I think it's a humility test. It is a test of my humility to do that. A penny, but I put them in a little jar, it's just I don't want to be so uppity that I can't stoop to bend and pick up a penny. And people look at me and I say, "Well, it's a penny from heaven," so they won't think I'm crazy, which I am. I am crazy. So I don't know if I've touched lightly on enough on what you asked me for. I can say that there's another element to this, and that is my resistance to authority. I didn't like taking orders from, working for people, taking orders. So that fostered my entrepreneurial spirit. And as I mentioned, I've purchased a lot of houses in auction and various ways, rehabbed them and sold them or rented them out. And but I did that because I wanted to build financial strength. I wanted to not have to be alarmed if someone knocked on my door at 3 a.m. I didn't want to be a bill collector. So, I've achieved that, so to speak.
Okay.
And I appreciate your question. Thank you for that question. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Students, I hope you have been inspired by author Arnold Sampson, as he has talked about how he was once in our seats. His story is a testament of our motto here at the illustrious Morgan State, which is to grow the future and lead the world, which is exactly what you're doing, sir. So we thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to acknowledge President Wilson, Provost Yu, Dean Jackie Jones of the School of Global Journalism and Communication, and the director of the library, Dr. Richard Bradbury. Can we give a round of applause for them? Please rise as the Morgan State University Choir, our world-renowned, sings the alma mater for us. Huh? Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the singing of our alma mater by Mr. Darren Scott, accompanied by Mr. Brandon Smith. Members of the Pi Eta chapter of Phi Alpha Symphonia Fraternity of America, Incorporated.
Fair Morgan, we love you so tried and so true. Our hearts at thy name through with pride. We owe thee allegiance, we pledge thee our faith, a faith which shall ever abide. We pledge thee our love, we pledge thee our faith, whatever the future may bring. And thus our devotion, fidelity to, and homage we pay as we sing. Fair Morgan, as onward the years quickly fly, and thou livest in memory sweet. We bring thee our laurels, whatever they be, and lay them with joy at thy feet. We pledge thee our love, we pledge thee our faith, whatever the future may bring. devotion, fidelity to, and homage we pay as we sing. We pledge thee our love, we pledge thee our faith, whatever the future may bring. And thus our devotion, fidelity to, and homage we pay as we sing, we sing.
So you are formally dismissed. I will thank our author, Mr. Sampson, who will gladly take questions at the desk here. He does have copies of his book, and we actually have copies in the library, in the cataloging department, so we should be in the system too. Have a great academic year, folks. Have a great history month. Happy birthday to this author. Her birthday today, so we see her.